through a famous sikha, and I've done it with the shir in 1998 for those who might have been here, and again in 2007. I see on the notes on the thing. And for those who want to know, it's in volume 20 of Likutei Sikhos on page, the third sikha on page 73. I'll just take you to the end first, so that you know where this is going. Everybody knows that we say a portion of Torah every day in the davening, the Akedah. Akedah is very famous. Everybody knows what it is. That Avram is told by Hashem, or he thinks that Hashem tells him to shecht his son, and he does it, and of course he doesn't have to kill him. The angel stops him, and at the end of the section that we read, Hashem says that, and now I know that and the question that the Rebbe asks in this sikha is, what's the big deal? I mean, I agreed, it's a terrible thing to have to kill your child, God forbid, but Jews have done worse, had to suffer worse, and we don't put them in the davening every day. And so what was it? And don't forget, God spoke to Avram and told him to do this. And the Rebbe asks a simple question. You know, if God appears to you and me and tells us to do it, we would do it. Probably we would do it. If we wouldn't do it, okay, we wouldn't do it. But what's the big deal that this is a central part of our daily religious obligation, that we stand in front of our God and recite this piece of Torah word for word every day, the Akedah. So the point of this sikha is that it's critical for one's own personal development and one's own personal relationship with his God to understand the depth of this whole thing with the Akedah. It's not the simple story that you and I read every day. And you need to understand the depths of it in order for you to, as I say, understand your own relationship with your God. So let's make the question as difficult as possible in terms of the question on what was the big deal. So let's start with this. First of all, it says, if you look at the text, and this isn't a shir where I go through the text, but Hashem asks Avram, please do this. He asks with the word please. It's a request. It's not an order. It's a request. That's the first thing. And then we are told by the Midrash and the Talmud that Hashem confided in Avram that if he failed in this test, and Avram had 10 tests, 10 challenges, 10 tests. We don't have to go through all of them now, but one of them was Ur Kasdim, where we'll see that he was thrown into a pit and survived it, thrown into a furnace and survived it. There was the test of Lech Lecha, which we did last week, of leaving his home and leaving his birthplace, leaving his comfort zone. There was the test with his wife. There were 9 tests until the Akedah, and he passed all of them. And then Hashem says in this Midrash that's quoted that if he didn't pass this test, the other test would be worth nothing. And the Rebbe says, how can you say that? A man uproots his whole life and single-handedly turns a generation of humanity from worshipping multiple gods into understanding that there is one God, introduces them to this concept, introduces them to the concept that there's such a thing as morality, that there's such a thing as... and morality is a very difficult problem. You know, let me give you an example. You take the ordinary common person in the street, and I'm not saying common to differentiate them, I mean the ordinary average Joe, and you ask him a moral question, right? Unless he has access to Torah, he has no real chance of getting that right. He can be lucky. I'll give you an example. Are you and I as Jews obligated to forgive the Nazis? I'm asking a question. If you are a good man and the Nazis say and Germans say they're sorry, and Germans say that their parents were really good people and they did this and they did that and they did tshuva, and they really were very sorry, and they learned that Hitler was a bad man, and they come to you and they say, I'm asking you as a Jew for forgiveness. Are you bound to forgive them? Now let me explain to you that there are religions that require you to forgive them. Christianity requires you to forgive him, right? In our system of morality, which is God's Torah, has v'shalom. How do we know, has v'shalom, that you can't forgive them? Because on Yom Kippur, when we clop on our breast and we say the Al-Het prayer 8 times, and there's a list of every conceivable VAYEIRA that you could possibly do, where you looked, what you ate, your ego, your this and girls. Nowhere is it, are you seeking forgiveness for wronging another person. You wrong another person, you don't ask God for forgiveness, you go and fix it. You steal from somebody, right? You steal from somebody $100, $1,000, whatever it is, and you go to Yom Kippur and you clop on your breast and you say, I'm so sorry I stole $1,000 from your uncle. It's useless.
Useless.
You got to give it back. Who can forgive you? Only Chaim Yankel, and Chaim Yankel will only forgive you if you pay him back the money. Now, all these dead Nazis, they're not doing anything to annul what they did. They're not paying. So how can we forgive them? You're not allowed. It's not yours to forgive. If he kills 5 children, or 1,500 children was the quota in Auschwitz a day. 1,500 children a day, gassed and burned. You can't forgive him. The children have got to forgive him. And can the children forgive him? So he's never going to be forgiven. Oh, are we going to shed a tear that he's never been going to be forgiven? It's none of our business. It's a matter for him and God. But we don't forgive. Now, these are difficult questions. They're moral questions. And if you don't have a Torah and you don't have a system of morality that is based on Torah, then you can't get that right. Or you're in danger of not getting it right. So, with the Akedah, when Hashem says, if you don't get this one right, none of your tests are worth anything, that's an incredible thing to say, because what about all the good that Avram did? What about the fact that he jumped into a furnace rather than worship many gods? What about all the other 9 tests? They're serious tests, and he proved himself to be one of the greatest human beings from creation till today. So how can you say that if you failed that test of the Akedah, and let's understand what the test was. to take his son, his only son that he loves, only son from this mother, and take him to a mountain that I'll show you, and on that mountain offer him up as a korban, as a sacrifice. And if he doesn't do that, nothing else is worth anything. How can you talk like that? And so that you understand that the question is even harder, it's not clear that he had to do it, because Hashem didn't command him to do it. Hashem asks him, please do it. And he has a very good argument, which we probably get back to as I take you through the Sikha, that he had wriggle room. He had negotiating room. He has wriggle room. He could say to God, but I don't get it. You promised that Yisrael would be more prolific than the stars in the sky and the sand on the ground, and Yisrael comes from Yitzhak. And if you tell me to shake Yitzhak, where's Yisrael going to come from? So he had a logical argument to put to Hashem, and Hashem is still saying, and it wasn't an order, and Hashem is still saying that test, if you don't do that test, none of the tests were worth anything. So the Rebbe says, you've got to understand this. This is a complex situation, and it's complex for a whole lot of reasons, which he goes through one by one. I'm going to try and take you through them. But the bottom line is this, that there is something very special and very different in the Akedah. And whether you know it or not until this year or some other year when you've learned this Sikha, that very big difference is something that you and I have as an inheritance. And the question is whether you can identify it in yourself, and whether or not you can use it for your own strength and growth and flowering. And of course, that is only to serve Hashem. So, and bear in mind that if you want to say that Avram was a martyr, and that's a wonderful thing that he was a martyr, it's true. It is a wonderful thing that he was a martyr. But there were many martyrs in Am Yisrael. Rabbi Akiva was a martyr. I'll tell you about Hannah in a minute, with her 7 sons. I mean, unfortunately, Nebuch, our history, is littered with martyrs. It's not as though martyrdom is a rarity in our culture and in our life and in our history. We've been martyred by Christians who wanted us to convert, by being burned at the stake in Spain because they converted. I'm not going to go through it now. It's a litany of misery that everybody knows about, and the fact is that many, many Jews chose death rather than relinquishing their relationship to their God. So if that's the case, the question is even stronger. What was the big deal with Avram? So there are some answers. So let's go through and the Rebbe rejects every one of these answers. You should know. The first answer is zrizus. I don't really know how to translate immediacy. Is urgency. Is that the proper?
Haste.
Rizus. Haste. So one answer is, well, what he did that was so terrific was that Hashem told him to check his son, and he didn't say, well, maybe tomorrow, give me some time to think about it. He ran to do it. That's what one explanation. And the Rebbe was not impressed by that. He said, the Rebbe says that very simply, that if you were told by God to do something, you'd also run. So the fact that he was so, he didn't waste any time, so what? That's not a reason to put this in the davening every day of our lives and remind ourselves of it every day of our lives. Then there's another argument, which the Rebbe also rejects, that it's normal to love your child more than yourself. You have a choice between you dying and your child dying. Many parents, don't have to be a Jew for this, many parents would say, take me, I'll take the bullet, let my child live. So if the real issue was that Avram had to sacrifice his son, some people say that the greatness of him was that he was prepared to do that rather than offer himself instead, because that offering himself instead is kind of normal. And if he's such a tzaddik, how much more so would he want to offer himself than his son? So the Rebbe rejects this. Why? Because there's a Gemara in Gittin. If anyone who wants to look it up, it's 57b. That's in the footnotes. It's not that I know it off by heart. There's a Gemara in Gittin which tells the story of Hannah. Now, Hannah was a Jewish woman who had 7 sons. And the Ptolemy, or whatever had a Avodah Zarah, and he says to Hannah, either the children worship and bow to an idol, or I kill them. And I'll kill them one by one in front of you. And that's it, unless you agree that to bow to this idol. And so she takes the first one, and Hannah says to her children, under no circumstances are you allowed to bow to this idol. In our Torah, there are 3 sins that you have to die for rather than perform. One of them is avodah zarah, one of them is adultery, and one of them is avodah zarah, adultery, pathetic. I'll think of it in a second.
Murder.
Murder. Yeah. Thank you. Murder, obviously, yes. So, in all of those cases, if somebody says you've got to murder this person, otherwise, or you're going to get killed, you have to choose getting killed. You have to know this is a very, very difficult part of law. We're talking about the difficulty of whether you have the right to forgive a Nazi. This is a very difficult area of law, this business, because giving your life, it's not your and my life to give. Suicide is illegal. Suicide is murder of yourself. So those 3 exceptions which require you to give your life rather than break those things, they are the only 3. And there are very serious questions. I'll give you an example. You have a rabbi, a holy Jew, a Rav, who's never ever tasted treif in his life. And he's taken into captivity by the Germans in a concentration camp. And the only food he can eat to stay alive is non-kosher food. Right? And he can't eat non-kosher. He can't eat non-kosher food. He's never tasted it. His whole life's built on not eating non-kosher food. Is he allowed to die? Not allowed to die. He's got to eat the non-kosher food because it's not one of the 3 exceptions. When the Frierdiker Rebbe called the 9 men in to, it's a famous story, in the 1920s, he called in 9 of the top Hasidim and said that I need you to draw blood and swear that even if it costs you your life, you're going to continue our work to build mikvahs, to build shuls, and now 100 years later, Stalin's dead and gone, and Am Yisrael Chai. And in Russia, like you can't believe.
Flourishing.
Flourishing. So there were a lot of Gedolei Yisrael, you should know, who said that the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't have the right to do that. Who says that you have the right to give up your life for doing the Rebbe's work? Where's it written that you can do that? So Hannah did have the right to do what she did, but she says to children, you have to die for this. So what happened? He kills the first one in front of Hannah, and then the second, and then says to the third one, no, you ready to? And Hannah says no, and she stands by and watches 6 of her children, one after the other, get slaughtered in front of her. You know what this means? And she didn't move a hair on her head. And then finally, to the last child, if you read this in Art Scroll's got it in English too, you can read it, it's heartbreaking. Even this Ptolemy, who was a cruel Gentile, took pity on the youngest one, because the youngest one was nearly a baby, a little child, of whatever age it was. And so what he did was he wanted to make a compromise. So he took off his ring, which had a picture of the idol on it, and he threw it down on the ground and told the boy to pick up the ring to play with it. So the child goes to pick up the ring, and the mother says, don't pick up the ring. And he kills the 7th one in front of him. Isn't that a bigger deal than Avram with Yitzhak? Ask the Rebbe. I mean, how many Hannahs have there been in our history? How many people? So what is this big deal that Avram was ready to sacrifice one son? And let's make it harder. God told him to do that. And God never told Hannah to do it. Hannah did it because it was part of halakha.
Strange.
Okay, l'chaim. The explanation the Rebbe accepts of why what Avraham Avinu did that was so magnificent is that whatever it was that we're going to find out is so significant, he was the first. And we have a concept in Torah, in Nigla as well as in Chassidus, that the person that opens the pipe it's a unique position. Opening the pipe allows Gashmias, allows Ruchnis to become part of Gashmias. Let me give you an example. The example I use every time we do this subject in a shir is, you remember that Roger, somebody or other, who first broke the 4-minute mile?
Bannister.
1950. So until 1951 or whatever it was, 54, whatever it was, nobody ever ran under 4 minutes for a mile. Every athlete all over the world, nobody ever ran under the 4. When Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, the world went mad. There was celebration. You can Google it. You'll see what the world went crazy. He ran the 4-minute mile. Within 5 minutes, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of athletes were running under 4 minutes. Where did this come from? So you can say that it was a coincidence, or the shoes aren't any better, the shorts aren't any better, the humanity isn't any stronger, the running field isn't any better quality. The fact, but it's explained in Kabbalah and in Hasidus that when a notion which wasn't hitherto in Gashmias is brought into Gashmias, it's brought in for everybody. And all of a sudden it becomes common property. It's like a patent that is sitting pristine, and then suddenly the patent is over, and all of a sudden everybody can use it. I remember when I was a kid, you're the car man, but V8 engines. Only Ford had V8s. Huh?
Ford was first.
Yep. And at the V8, everybody was so jealous of the V8. When the patent ran out, all of a sudden everybody had V8 engines for 5 minutes, and then nobody cared about. Do you ever see anybody wanting a V8 engine anymore? Anyway,
They can't afford it.
I know. But the point is that when somebody does something in Gashmias for the first time, you introduce that spiritual reality into your daily, into physical life. And that's why some people are very reluctant to articulate something negative. They don't want to bring it into Gashmias. My mother-in-law, Oliver Sholem, who in many ways was had a lot of prejudices from Europe, when she said something that she was scared of bringing into Gashmias, she used to spit the poo-poo and had some saying about the Sotan, that the Sotan shouldn't see or hear or whatever it was. So what Avram Avinu did was he brought into physicality, into Gashmias, for the first time, the notion of Mesiras Nefesh. And that's what we're going to be explaining in a minute. Mesiras Nefesh, which I suppose theoretically gets translated as self-sacrifice, but it can't be just self-sacrifice, because what about Hannah and her children? Or what about Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva, who he waited for the day that he could have self-sacrifice. So what was the big deal? So the answer is, the big deal was that whatever Abraham Avinu did, and we haven't come to that yet, what he did was he made this spiritual state a physical reality, a possibility for other people. Until then, it wasn't a possibility for other people. So the Rebbe says, and we're going to do this in a minute, what is this thing about Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice? We're going to come to this. Just shelve it for a minute as we talk. It's bittul. It's the ability to do a piece of absolute gymnastic. Let me explain. We have a saying, Ein oid milvadoi. There is nothing else but godliness. Yeah. There's nothing else but God, right? And we know that God created everything in the 6 days of creation and recreates that every moment. So he's recreating you and me. Ein oid milvadoi would mean that you and me don't exist in any real way, because we're godliness. We're manifested godliness. What did God do in the creation? He gave you and me a personal sense of independent identity, correct? He gave us an independent. When you think of yourself, and you think, or Chaim Yankel thinks of himself. Let's go away from the table. Chaim Yankel thinks of himself. He thinks I. He doesn't think God. He thinks I. Chaim Yankel. So this is a very big paradox, because on the one hand, Hashem is creating everything every moment, and Ein oed milvadoi, and on the other hand, a person is thinking I, and he means it. He means it with all his heart and soul and might. He's thinking I'm an I. Mesiras Nefesh requires an abdication for whatever period of time it is. Might be only a second, of the I. And that's very, very difficult to comprehend, because part of the whole creative design is that you have an I. But the magic is to relinquish that I in favor of Hashem. We'll come back to that towards the end of the Sikha. And that is an extraordinary achievement. And with that achievement was only done the first time by Avram Avinu, as we'll see. So before we get there, the Rebbe says, well, what about martyrdom? There's plenty of martyrdom. I mean, these Arabs, Yamak Shemoy, who blow themselves up with, everybody knows about them, that they take their children, send their children out with bombs strapped to them, blow themselves up. They believe what they're doing. Don't think, you're not telling me they don't believe in what they're doing. Okay, let's say they get paid.
Still.
But still,
Still believe.
they believe that it's worth one life to save a family of 10. Or they believe in a cause. They believe in a religious cause. Or they believe in a non-religious cause, like freedom. What do they say? Give me freedom or give me death, right?
72.
Huh?
72.
72 virgins.
They may have a reward in their oil on my bar.
Yeah.
Give me virgins. Why they want virgins? I don't understand.
It's a big deal.
They're like 5 virgins.
But a good one.
Virgin on the
So the Rebbe explains that the difference between what we're talking about, Mesiras Nefesh, and martyrdom, is that martyrdom is an expression of the self. It's an expression of the self for some kind of reward, whether it's a reward that you imagine that your belief system needs support, or that you believe that life is not livable without it, for example. Give me freedom or give me death. That man says, I'd rather be dead than a slave. I get it. It's a point of view. But that's not Mesiras Nefesh. That's him expressing a value that is important enough to him to die for. That's not what Mesiras Nefesh is. When that man wants to be a good communist, for example, and he's prepared to go and fight in the Tsar's army, or the non-Tsar's army, of course, the communist army, and he's prepared to die for the cause. Or a kamikaze pilot. Remember them?
Yeah.
From the Second World War, the Japanese kamikaze pilots? They were men of honor. They were men of standing. They were men of wealth and power. And they were prepared to drive their planes into the... What about the Twin Towers? You and I witnessed that, the Twin Towers. Those people on board those aeroplanes were prepared to drive the planes into there to kill, because they were killing enough people. And they thought that was a good return on their investment. Their investment was the loss of their life, but they took so many lives with them.
Very fanatical. But
Okay, but they're
return on
basically, their life is made more enhanced by the act of martyrdom. Now understand that. Their life is in their eyes better because of the martyrdom. Maybe it's publicity. It's if a person wants to die in public as a martyr, okay, he dies, but the last minutes of his life is his greatest fulfillment.
5 seconds of fame.
5 seconds of fame, okay. That is not what we're talking about. That's not what Mesiras Nefesh is. True Mesiras Nefesh is not an enhancement of the self. It is a sacrifice of the self. And you have to understand this is a massive distinction. It's a chasm. There's nothing remotely similar to an Arab who blows himself up for a cause in order to feel better, in order to help his family, in order to get publicity, in order to, whatever his motive is a self-enhancement. Mesiris Nefesh is the exact opposite of that. When Avraham Avinu did the Akedah, he had two men with him, and he knows that he's going up to sacrifice his son, and he sends them back. So there's not even any chance that he's going to be on the evening news. There's no one with a camera ready to take the picture. He's alone with his son. Nobody is going to know about it, and he loves this son terribly, and he believes God, because God says, before he gave him this request, he says that the whole of the future of Am Yisrael is going to be through this boy, through this man. He was 47 years old. 45, I can't remember. 42.
39.
37? Okay.
9.
I don't know. It's calculated by Sarah. Sarah died at the age of 127, and she died when she got the news of the Akedah, and you can work backwards, and that's how they work out his age. I've forgotten how to do it. But the point is that there was no chance of any publicity. There was no chance of any self-aggrandizement. There was nothing that he was growing with. So what is it? What is Mesiris Nefesh? Mesiris Nefesh means that you are prepared to do Ratzon Hashem, the will of Hashem, at every cost. Not at any cost, at every cost. There's nothing that stands in the way of you unifying your Ratzon with Hashem's Ratzon, your will with Hashem's will. Now, you have to know that this is a secret of enormous empowerment. We're going to get to this in a minute. It's an enormous empowerment, because if a Jew does that, he's actually taking the plug and plugging it into a nuclear reactor. That's what he's doing. It's not, there's no him anymore. It's just Ratzon Hashem. And if you're in tune with Ratzon Hashem, you're Superman. You're not even a man. You're a neshama, you're a Helik Eloka Mimal. You're part of God. Nothing can be bad for you. Nothing can go wrong for you. But you're not doing it so that nothing can be wrong for you, because that would be martyrdom. Ratzon Hashem, the issue of Mesiris Nefesh is one of bittul. Now, let me explain what bittul is. Bittul, we have to do a quick detour. I'm hopeful that most of you know this in its revision. Bittul means humility. Now, humility is very misunderstood because the English translation is terrible. The English translation of bittul, humility, implies a doormat, right? That who's humble? Somebody that gets trodden on, and that's not how we define bittul. Bittul is this. First of all, you're not expected to be an idiot. There's nothing in our culture, in our Torah, in Hasidus, that expects you and me to consider themselves worse than we are. On the contrary, it's a travesty to do that, because you're really not appreciating Hashem's gifts that Hashem's given you. Whether you're tall or short or skinny or fat or clever or stupid or romantic or cold, all of these traits are given to you by Hashem to work with through your life, and to pretend that you don't have one is tantamount. But first of all, it's stupidity, and second of all, you're not being grateful. So what does it mean to be humble. It means this, that you know your value. You're not expected to pretend that value isn't there. You know it. But the question is, what's your responsibility with your value? And are you using your value to the extent that you should be, given the fact that Hashem's given you that talent or that obligation? That's humility. So if somebody says to somebody, oh, you've done that terrifically, for example, to lap that up is conceit and stupidity, because more often than not, you're just simply exercising the muscle of a talent that's God-given. You've done nothing to deserve it. But more importantly, the question that plagues a tzaddik, the question that plagues a Lubavitcher Rebbe, is not whether he's clever or whether he's doing enough for him, for that Rebbe with his talents that he knows. Moshe Rabbeinu knew he was the best man for the job. You can't say that Moshe Rabbeinu thought he was a shlepper. He didn't think he was a shlepper. He understood that he was the shliach of God to take Am Yisrael out of Mitzrayim and bring them into Eretz Yisrael. But the issue is that given all of that energy from Hashem to do that job, was he doing it properly? And his torture is maybe not. Maybe somebody else, if somebody else had those talents, they'd do better. That's humility. And it's got to be genuine. It's got to be absolutely genuine. So that level of humility, I'd rather use the better word, which means bittul, which means that you recognize that me is nothing. You are a series of energies given by Hashem to be a shliach, to do a job. In the same way that if you're given the job of doing X, Y, Z in Gashmias, you're going to be provided with the wherewithal to do that job in Gashmias. Same thing with this. So now, but there are some moments in life when a Jew has the ability to surrender all notion of himself to Ratzon Hashem. And that is real Mesiras Nefesh. That's got nothing to do with self-aggrandizement, nothing to do with a belief system, nothing to do with publicity, nothing to do with bringing more money into the home for your starving children. There's no benefit. There's no issue of a benefit. The issue is this Ratzon Hashem? If it is, there's nothing else that matters. Nothing else that matters. So start building this picture as we go together, that you and I have a Yetzer Hara. That's how we created, right? We created with a value system. We Jews have the obligation of being a light to the nations. We Jews have the obligation to bring Ruchnius into Gashmias and elevate Gashmias into Ruchnius. We've learned this over and over again. And to be a light to the nations. But we're human beings. And we live in Gashmias. We live in physicality. So there are going to be beautiful girls. There's going to be beautiful cars. There's going to be food that's bad for you. There's going to be substances that are bad for you. There's going to be environments that are bad for you. And we have a Yetzer Hara. And that Yetzer Hara finds these things delicious, craves them. So now the issue is this. You can refuse them for your own self-aggrandizement. Then you're a martyr. And it's a wonderful thing. Nobody's criticizing it. You have a new lady in the office who's very beautiful, and very tempting, and makes it known to you that she would like you to take liberties with her, and you don't. And you don't. Why not? Because you're better than that. You learn Torah every day, and you know that it's no good for your wife, and you know that it's no good for your children, and you know this and you know that, and you stop yourself doing it. And you stop yourself doing it for a day, a week, a month, a year, 5 years, until she leaves in desperation, going to try and get another boss in another job. And you've succeeded, and you've succeeded. It's a wonderful madrega to get to, but that's not Mesiris Nefesh. Mesiris Nefesh is, I'm not going near her for none of those reasons, because those reasons are all building me up as a spiritual Jew. I'm not going near her because it's Rotzen Hashem, and Rotzen Hashem and my Rotzen are the same. Not with everything, not every time. I'm just trying to explain to you what the Rebbe is saying that you have as a koyach, as a power, that you have the power to face this, any test that you have, in two ways. One is martyrdom, to build yourself up at one level or another. Sorry, let's start at the beginning. You can fail the test. That's the first thing. You sleep with it. I was repeating the story to somebody that I don't drink alcohol anymore. Why? Because I had these cells in my throat, and the doctor said that you have to stop drinking alcohol or you die. So that was a good enough reason for me to stop drinking. We were at lunch in somebody's sukkah last year or the year before, and he said, how come you're not saying l'chaim? And I explained. And he said, oh, I couldn't do that. And I said, what, if you're going to die? And he said, yeah, I'd rather die. And he meant it. Now, okay, so some people are stupid. He really meant that he'd rather die than go without whiskey. I mean, so it's just stupid. But what about the guy who doesn't drink anymore because it's in his interest not to drink anymore? I don't want to die, so I don't drink. That's a form of martyrdom of the whiskey. But it's got nothing to do with bittul. What's bittul? Bittul is to do with the fact that you take it into your mind.
No, Nizarachim.
Alaikum shalom. Yes, please. Any way you like, but please be quiet so that I can finish the shir.
Hello. Hello, guys. Hello.
So where was I? So that person who chooses to go without whiskey for the reason that he's going to live, it's an intelligent choice. And maybe there's a level of martyrdom of his Yetzer Hara to have the whiskey, but it's in his self-interest to do it. That's not what we're talking about. Mesiris Nefesh means that it's simply a matter of Rotzen Hashem and your Rotzen. Your Rotzen fitting together with Rotzen Hashem for no reason other than you as a Jew need to fulfill Rotzen Hashem. That's real Mesiris Nefesh. And that real Mesiris Nefesh was created in the first time by Avram. And that creation for the first time opens the pipe for you and me. He's offering you a l'chaim.
A bit.
And that first you are disturbing me at the moment.
Sorry.
If you're sorry, please stop it. No, you're still talking. Can I ask you to leave? It saddens me deeply when a religious Jew perhaps makes him the center of attention at the expense of people sitting and learning Torah. It's wrong.
Very young.
Huh?
He's very young.
Yeah, okay, well, he'll grow up.
Правильно.
Maybe there'll be other 82-year-old men who'll tell him to behave. So let's go back to this, because it's incredibly important that you and I are empowered to reach a level of greatness which comes from not just observing Torah and mitzvahs because it's good for us, or because we understand that we're shluchim of the Eibishter to bring Ruchnius into Gashmius and elevate Gashmius into Ruchnius. But there's a whole different dimension available to you and me, that you are tempted to do something by your Yetzer Hara, and you stop, and you go away in your mind and think. But the reason that we are not doing, the reason this is delicious because of my Yetzer Hara. But why am I not doing it? Not for personal greatness, but because Hashem doesn't want me to. That's not Ratzon Hashem. Now, can you understand, says the Rebbe, what a different life you have if your motive is to join Ratzon Hashem rather than fighting the battles of your Yetzer Hara for your own grandeur? It's a whole different perspective. And that's such an important difference in perspective that we say it every day in the davening to remind ourselves of this energy that we have available to us. Now, can you do it every day? Can you do it with every day? I give the shir. I mean, I learned the secret and I repeat it to you. I don't do it any better than anybody else does. However, the reality is that it's available for everybody, and because of that, if you know this and you learn this sikha a few times, this concept a few times, you'll apply it once or twice in your life for 10 or 15 days, and hopefully with increases. So let's hope we do. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Go ahead.
Do you have a lecture about trial of Yitzhak?
Huh?
This event also could be interpreted.